Thanks, Bill. So my name is Alex. I'm the city horticulturist, and we'd like to kind of discuss to start what it means to be native. Um,
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm the executive director of the Colorado Native Plant Society. In person, we do this little activity, so let's do it together. Your camera can be on or off, but let me ask you some questions. So the first question is, everybody should stand up. Let's start by standing up. And we're going to answer this question, what does it mean to be native? So, everyone's standing up now. And my question to you is, if you were born in Colorado, stay standing up. If you were not born in Colorado, sit down. Now, the next question is, if you're still standing up, were your parents born in Colorado? If your parents were not born in Colorado, please sit down. And now we have just a few people left, but if your grandparents were born in Colorado, stay standing up. If they were not, please sit down. So you can see here, this happens every time we do this. By the time we go through 3 generations, almost no one is standing. None of us are native to this landscape, or almost none of us. If we have indigenous folks in our community conversation, when we do this, they're the only folks who are standing after 3 generations. And so when we ask ourselves, what does it mean to be native? We're talking about plants that have been here for many generations. They've evolved here in this landscape. And so those are our native plants. And we have North American natives that go across large geographic areas. And then we have endemic natives that might be just found in a single canyon. So there's a wide breadth of that. Another language that comes up is, what does it mean to be exotic? Well, it's just the opposite. It's us. We're all exotic. And then invasive plants are exotic plants that have aggressive biological characteristics, and they actually outcompete the natives. So those are some words you might have come up with, but that's what it means to be native.
Great. So I'd like to do a little background about my professional career. So you'll see in the bottom right corner a beautiful picture of James Ranch, which you guys are lucky enough to live right by. You'll also see a hippo. So from the James Ranch, I moved back to Colorado Springs and started working at the Cheyenne Mountain Zoo. And finally, I started working here with the city of Colorado Springs, going on a year and some change. So been here for my entire life, and I really love native horticulture especially. So we'd like to talk a little bit about why we should go native, the benefits of native plants in our yard. And there are a million different reasons to go native. One of the first things is the pollinator decline. We're seeing huge decline in birds as well as pollinators. And when we plant native habitat, we begin to see life come back to our yards, which is really important. We also need to go native because of the water. Water is not a finite resource, water is not an infinite resource for us. So it's really important that when we go to landscape our yards, we're using plants that can handle a drought. And you'll see water savings are really going to be important and big for us when we start to plant native plants. I have a lot of natives in my landscape, and I do very little watering, and it's very nice because it's very low maintenance, and very low maintenance is really nice because we get to enjoy our yards rather than pulling weeds and digging in the dirt constantly. So you get to spend more time in your yard and enjoy your yard without breaking your back. We also want to go native because we're seeing declines in some of these plant populations in their wild habitats. So if we can start to bring the wild habitat to our front yard, we'll see a lot of really good environmental effects in our cities. It's also important to go native because we can collect seed for ourselves. And the moment we put these native plants in our yard, they become stock for us. We can take cuttings from them. We can grow seed from the seed that they produce. And they start to maintain themselves in a way that you have to spend very little money on your yard. here's a photo of my staff. We are doing a lot of seed collection to get our seed stocks started. Colorado Springs is rich in open space land. We have more than probably anywhere in the state as far as city wild spaces. So we go out and we collect seed and then we begin to propagate. So you'll see in some of these slides some of the different examples of seeds that we collect. We go through and painstakingly clean all of the seed. And we do a lot of it by hand, though we're starting to get a little smarter and we're using sieves and things like that. You'll see we do all sorts of native propagation at the city greenhouses. So I'm holding a little cottonwood that I grew from a plug last summer. So this was just a branch that we got to root, and then this plant was actually taken to an open space for revegetative purposes. So you can see my crew here. I've got a small crew of about 3 to 4 people depending on the time of year. And we've grown a lot of different woody stem cuttings as well as starting plants by seed. So here you'll see photos of some of our more mesic or dry species that we've grown by seed. We've also had success growing these from cuttings as well. We're using soil blocks as much as we can, and we're finding that some of our more xeric species are happier in the soil blocks. Penstemons, columbines, gaillardia, things of those natures that grow on rocky slopes are germinating and growing very well for us in the soil blocks, which is allowing us to cut our plastic use back. What we started to do is, as I've gone around the city, I grew up in Colorado Springs, I've really paid attention to what our soil looks like. And instead of using peat or potting soil for our plants, we're using red breeze or Cimarron breeze material that are heavy in aggregates. So here you can see we have riparian and dryland soil ratios, and we're really having good success with not a lot of organic material because there's not a ton of organic material in our soil. Fernbush, which isn't native to the state, but a great xeric shrub that we can use, is growing by seed here, and we've up-potted these into a 5-gallon already. So in about a year and a half, we've seen these plants really get quite big. Lots of blue flax. This is kind of a bread and butter plant for us because it grows so well in this red breeze for us. And here you can see gaillardia in both soil blocks, and we have some in pots. So we're having success both ways, but we're trying to cut back our plastic use at the city level as much as possible. It's columbine in the soil blocks, a ratibida in a pot, and we grow them in soil blocks, and we've had success with both. So we're really finding good success rates with the soil block. So we'd like to talk a little bit about eliminating the peat moss, because I find especially commercially produced plants are often growing in peat, and I have cut peat out of my growing operation for the city entirely because we're able to compost our plant material and reuse this plant material once it's become organic matter for us, or sort of like soil or compost. So we mix our homegrown compost with the breeze, and we don't have to buy in any bagged peat whatsoever. It's really important that we're doing this. We're cutting the peat out because, first of all, none of our native soils are very peaty. So when we transplant a plant, success rates are often lower because they're going into a rocky or a dry soil that's just nothing like peat. The other problem with peat is it's a huge carbon sink for us. And as we dig these up, we're pretty much completely getting rid of these peat bogs that hold the carbon, and they take forever to grow back. So we're really trying to not use any peat, and I find problems with a lot of the native plants in garden centers because they're in that peaty mix. We've actually got location data on a lot of the plants that we're using for revegetation, so we can go back and see our success rates with the red breeze and our compost mix, and so far we're seeing really good results. This is our soil, and like I said, this is just made from plant material that we throw away, also some wood chips, leaves, things of that sort. We also have gone through and lifted some plants in areas that we're going to have trails built. We take that plant material, put it into pots, and then revegetate areas after the fact. This is a little wordy, but some information on the amount of money that we've saved at the City of Colorado Springs doing our own compost rather than buying in peat soil. And I really want to encourage you guys to go to your bulk material yards. CNC and Pioneer are the ones that we have here, because a ton of the breeds that we use is $32, and bagged peat soil is far more expensive than that. So we're really able to save a lot of money by using this, and we're seeing our plants grow and look much better. So you can see the difference between what our soil budget was and how much it costs for us to produce our own soil in house. So we also want to help homeowners reduce the soil costs. So you guys are going to ask, well, how do I do this at home? We can do all of this by buying red breeze or a breeze material from your local bulk material yard, or just gravel. And you can take this, put this in pots, and put your seeds right in that, water it in, and let it freeze outside. And it's so easy to grow this way, and it's going to save you a ton of money. I think you can go to these bulk material yards with 5-gallon buckets or Rubbermaid totes. You'll drive on a scale, they'll weigh your car, you'll fill up the buckets with the material that you chose, and then leave. And you're going to be out maybe $10 or $15. And a large bag of potting soil these days is $40, $50. So you're really going to save a lot of money by using a soil mix that's very similar to the soil that we already have. So here are some of the outcomes of our horticulture department in the first year that I've been with the city. So because of the Colorado Native Plant Society, we saw huge seed donations, and we're able to really get this program started. At this point, we've probably produced closer to 10 or 12,000 plants, and we're producing more as we speak. So we've saved the city thousands and thousands of dollars, and our production costs are very minimum. All of these plants are going to go throughout the city, and we have historic medians that need to have plant material on them. So what we're going to start to do is train the citizens in Colorado Springs to learn to love what these native and xeric landscapes look like, so we can start to see major changes with the landscapes over time. And here are some photos of some cactus that we uppotted and uprooted from a bike trail that was being installed. So I'm going to give it over to Maggie, and she's going to talk about how we can start a native seed cycle in our community.
Well, thank you so much, Alex, and thank you to all the local community members in Colorado Springs who have been attending events at the greenhouses, collecting seed, etc. I'll tell you all about that. And this has just been an excellent partnership with our city, and we have great leadership in the Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Services Department. We thank you for supporting this work, including Councilman Nancy Henjum and Judith Rice-Jones, citizen activist and citizen and seed collector, who was probably the first person to be inspired to this concept of restoring the seed bank. And she is personally responsible for a lot of the seed that we started with, and a lot of the plants you just saw in those slides. And then finally, we got an Aiken Audubon grant. And I like to stop here because this is a grant that follows riparian restoration for avian habitat. And so thank you, Aiken Audubon. You can see we've been working hard to use our grant to support woody stem propagation. And so always in your community, reach out to Audubon, because we're doing this for the pollinators as much as we are doing it for ourselves. And thanks to the crew, Kevin, Kendra, Jason, and Julie. We love hanging out with you. You do such great work, and your leadership really shows all over our city. Here's a bunch of people. People come to the greenhouses endlessly, so we'll just say farewell whenever we have an event and Alex talks. It's a great success. So I am Maggie, the Executive Director of the Colorado Native Plant Society. We're a nonprofit organization dedicated to furthering the knowledge, appreciation, and conservation of native plants and habitats of Colorado through education, stewardship, and advocacy. We are geographically located, we have geographic orientation all over the state. We have 8 chapters right now, 7 chapters, from Fort Collins, Boulder, Denver, all the way down to Colorado Springs on the Front Range, and then chapters centered in Durango, San Luis Valley, and Montrose and Grand Junction. We have statewide committees, and this helps to organize our 1,700 members by their interest in certain engagements. And so the things we talk about and work with Alex on are actions of our horticulture committee. Across the state, our chapter volunteers organize botany hikes and special speakers, and we also do this from the statewide level. So all the time, there's great programming in our calendar. Also, if you are inspired by our conversation, the website has tons of resources on it that will fill up your boredom times. No worries, there'll be endless opportunities for learning here. We also publish a quarterly magazine, Aqualesia, and there's always great columns in here that help to deepen our knowledge. And like, for example, last year we had a whole running series called Plant This, Not That, and it aligned like an exotic plant with a native plant. And we have a presence on social media. And now I want to get to the side of the conversation. Alex explained his part of our partnership, but from our side, we're a nonprofit, and we observe the problem is that there's just not enough native plant materials to enact all of the projects that we're asked to do. And so we've been really working to kind of close this gap, seasonal gap. How can we become more self-sustaining? And you too can do this in your communities. And so I am a researcher, and I do dryland seed bank restoration. And we started to do this work in the horticulture environment. And that was kind of my start with this particular part of it. And before being the executive director, I was the avid volunteer for the organization. And so the solutions I see are working through our partnerships, right? We have education, but we work with our nurseries, municipal partners, corporate partners, and academic partners to really develop a community for this native seed cycle. We do have a plant sale, and we're hoping to have a plant sale in Durango. We're really working on laying these stepping stones to getting to a place where native plant materials are more available in the Southwest as well. And so you can get involved in so many ways, and we have so much virtual programming, so we're able to educate ourselves across the state, even though we're not in the same proximity. But let's think about how this actually happens. If your community can endeavor to collect seeds, gain permissions to collect seeds in your landscapes and in your native plant demonstration gardens, you start to pedal it. You get the cycle going. Having free seed and volunteers makes growing native plants a no-cost proposition. And that's what Alex described to you. We brought the seeds, we made ourselves available, and magic happened. And that's what CONIPS can do for people all over the state. And so if this talk has interested you, I hope we can continue to communicate about how you can start collecting seed, sharing it among your community, engaging in winter propagation, winter sowing, educating about native gardening, and it just becomes a whole cyclic process that goes through all the seasons and builds a beautiful social network. So thank you very much for listening to our talk. And if you have any questions, please contact the Colorado Native Plant Society at gmail.com. And I promise you, I will get the message to Alex. Thank you so much.